We're seeing some great intro bonuses. One of the best cards just got discontinued, but I'll walk through how you can still get it for now, and we're going to do a deep dive on the Ritz-Carlton's Yacht Collection, which is in a financial crisis. It's not looking good for them. Big favor before we dive into everything is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm. If you know someone that might benefit, then share this with them. If the Chase Sapphire Reserve is on your list, this store high offer is ending soon and well worth considering. You're looking at 150k bonus points after you spend $6,000 on purchases in the first 3 months from account opening. There is a $7.95 annual fee, but you also get a ton of credits. You might be surprised that you can actually break even. The easiest one to use is the up to 300 for travel purchases. If you travel, especially abroad or to Vegas, the up to 500 with the edit hotels is a bit annoying, but still usable. There also is a limited time one. This is up to $250 for select Chase travel hotels through December 31st, 2026 with partners like IHG. You also can stack this with the last one, making it a bit easier. If you like to eat at fancier restaurants, the semi-annual up to 300 dining credit for Sapphire exclusive tables on OpenTable is a fun one. Our go-to in San Francisco is Angler, which is a 1 Michelin star seafood restaurant by the water. I'd recommend going for lunch. It's $55 per person, and both the sea bream and half chicken are delicious and worth trying. Statebird's a fun option that we usually do a few times a year. The Progress, which is next door, has grown on me though, especially if you're in a group of 4. If you like concerts or live sports, so for example, I try to watch the Spurs when they're in town, since they're my favorite team, you get up to 300 for StubHub and Viagogo credit, which is broken down semi-annually. The next batch are hit or miss. Personally, I really like the up to 120 for Lyft, even if it is monthly, but that's because I do a lot of rideshare. Apple TV, I don't know why, but I don't really use. I feel like my default is Netflix or HBO most of the time, but maybe I need to find an Apple TV show that I like. Peloton I don't really use or care about, but if you do, then great to have. Same thing with DoorDash promos and also Dash Pass. I know a lot of us don't like leaving money on the table, but I'm a happy camper if the value I'm getting from the credits that I actually use, even after I discount them, already covers the annual fee. Back to the intro bonus, the obvious question is what's 150k points worth? For cash back or as a statement credit, you're looking at 1 cent per point, which should be 1,500 in value. For points boost, it's a range depending on your use case, and this can change in the future. Right now, you're generally looking at 1.2 to 2 cents per point, and for the special partner ones, it's up to 2.5 cents per point. The range here being 1,800 to 3,750 in value. If you are looking to transfer to partners for premium travel, you can get a ton of upside. I generally target 2 cents per point, which would be 3,000 in value. On the other hand, if your willingness to pay number is higher, then maybe it's 3 cents per point, especially if you're looking at first and business class flights and you would otherwise pay out of pocket. But yeah, overall a pretty wide range, but all the numbers work in your favor pretty well. The return on spend, so intro bonus divided by total spend, is pretty impressive. Even on the low end, for cash back, you're looking at 25% return on spend. For a lot of people, probably closer to 37.5, and given how I travel, it's 50%. But yeah, it could be a lot higher if you are more aggressive, let's say 62.5 to 75%. You also do have downgrade pass in year 2 if the card stops being a fit. This includes the Chase Freedom Unlimited and also the Chase Freedom Flex. Like with all cards, make sure that the math actually works for you. If you want to run the numbers, we have a calculator that should pop up. If you search CSR, worth it, AskSebby. On that note, if you want to learn about cards, whether this one or pretty much any other card out there, and you want to support the channel, we have links on our website, AskSebby.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, that the cards make sense, but otherwise it's a huge way to support the channel, so thank you in advance. The Citi Custom Cash Card just got discontinued. If you go to their site right now, Citi is no longer accepting applicants as of May 28th. The funny thing though is that you can still get the card. The reason people like it is that you can get 5% on your top eligible spend category each billing cycle on up to 500 in spend. Categories include restaurants, gas stations, grocery stores, select travel, select transit, select streaming services, drugstores, home improvement stores, fitness clubs, and live entertainment. If you only have one card, a lot of people like to stick it as the drugstores, entertainment, or gas card. The main reason being that those tend to be harder as categories. If you have multiple though, then you have a lot more flexibility. After product changing a lot of my cards, I now have 4 of them, and the only one I left alone was the Citi Prestige card. It depends on the mix of your other cards, but you could easily do 2 on, let's say, groceries and 2 on gas, or maybe it's 1 on 4 different categories. Or maybe it's 3 on one and 1 on another one. 5% back on up to 2,000 in spend, with weaker categories being options, doesn't hurt at all. In order to get the card, you can no longer apply, but you can product change. One of the options is to call them, but I would just do it online. I'll link to a blog post with this in case I'm going too fast or you need a script, but it's pretty straightforward. You message them and ask them to do the product change. You're going to run into the AI initially, but you can chat with representative after. Once you start talking to someone, you can explain that you want a product change. And if you do have multiple cards with Citi, then you have to give them the last 2 digits. They'll give you options for the card for the product change. Knock on wood that it sticks around as an option. They'll then run through the benefits of the card, what you're getting with the new one, and what you're giving up with the old one. You do have to confirm the change and also confirm your mailing address. That way they know that it's you. That's pretty much it though, pretty easy. If you have multiple cards, I would just do those as well. You can't really do multiple at the same time, sadly, so you do have to go through one by one, and you also can't speed run it. You have to go through the whole flow. So picking the cards, confirming that you understand the terms, and everything else. Maybe a bit annoying, but you can just watch YouTube while doing it, so pretty easy there. But yeah, for me, chat was super easy and what I would do again if I had to. If you are looking to do this, I would do it sooner rather than later. The main issue being that we don't know what's going to happen and how they're going to treat this. So last year of the Citi Rewards Plus card, that ended up getting forced product changed to the Citi Strata card. With that card, you didn't have a choice outside of, I think, applicants who are in their 12-month window. At the same time, some of the prior cards haven't been touched. For example, the Citi Prestige card is still here and running. That's despite the Citi Strata Elite card arguably being the successor. There also are some weird in-between cases from 6 or 7 years ago. For example, the Citi Dividend card is arguably the prior iteration of their 5% cards. In 2019, you can no longer product change to the card, even though it was discontinued a while back. Right now, as of June 2026, it's still up and running with the updated categories and activations, so it seems like someone's still running it. That's also not for everyone though. Some people did get forced product changed to the Citi Custom Cash Card back in 2022. Yeah, a bit confused about what determines keeping the card versus a forced change. With all of that said, and let me know if I'm crazy here, but it feels like very minimal downside risk. Best case, you get to keep one of the stronger cards out there, and worst case, you get forced product changed to the next 5% card. If you have an American Airlines card or a Citi Double Cash card, I would probably product change while you still can. There are some caveats, so for example, if you are checking bags and you're getting value, or maybe the timing is weird, then maybe that doesn't make sense. On the 2% end, I feel like that's a bit more fungible since there's a lot of other cards that do the same job. Out of curiosity, are you going to product change anything? And also, what do you think is going to happen? The Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection might be in trouble. Their first super yacht is the Evruma, which is Greek for discovery. Interestingly, it launched in 2020, but it didn't have its maiden voyage until 2022, given the circumstances of what was happening during that time. There's only 149 rooms, and it's their flagship ultra-luxury super yacht. Taking a look at the pictures, it seems pretty nice. Good looking food, especially for a cruise ship, and nice gym, and seems well equipped. Also a lot of other amenities on board, but smaller ship. That was the first one, and now there's 3. The second one is the Ilma, which is Finnish for air, and this one has 224 suites and is a Forbes 5-star pick. This one launched in 2024. We'll get to size in a second. Luminara, which is Latin for light or illumination, is the third one, which launched in 2025 with 226 suites. In terms of size, the flagship is actually the smallest with the least rooms, about half the size of the 2 new ones, which are quite a bit bigger. The reviews seem a bit mixed. I'm not really a big cruise person, so let me know if these are off base. Cruise Critic has it at 3.5 out of 5. The main complaints seem to be around food, just being okay rather than mind-blowing. Also a bit of coordination issues for service, especially off-menu drinks like Sidecar. So it's good, but not great, especially at the price point. For a shorter 6-night cruise back in 2025, you're looking at $16,000. Yeah, across the board, it's either the price for what you get, or just the food being not that great or being problematic. Let's actually take a look at the current prices because I'm kind of curious. For Luminara, one of the bigger boats, the cheapest one I'm seeing is $10K for 7 nights, and it's Vancouver to Vancouver. You are going somewhere, it just means that you're starting and ending in Vancouver, and it looks like you're going up and then back down. The most expensive one is 12 nights, Hong Kong to Tokyo, for $24,300. Wow. There's a lot of stops along the way, but I feel like you could just visit those places and stay at the top hotels, eat at the nicest places, and maybe have a better time. The best hotel in Hong Kong, and technically the world, is Rosewood, Hong Kong. That's $800 to $900 a night, so $24K would be 24 nights. Oh no, really? So the cruise fare is per person? So that's actually $50K for 2 people. I'm not sure if I'm insane or maybe I'm just a brokey, but that seems pretty crazy. Some of the best hotels in the cities that they're stopping at might be $500 a night, so Capella, Taipei. For a fraction of the price, you can stay for a lot longer and also go to their best restaurants. Even going up to Osaka, you have Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, Waldorf Astoria, and those are about $500, maybe $600 a night, so $50K would be close to 100 nights. Okay, there are some decent prices, not great, but at least reviewable. For Ilma, one of the other big ones, the cheapest one is Miami to Miami, which is $1,400, but it's only 3 nights, so still $1,300 a night. Looking at it, it doesn't seem that impressive. I feel like you could do the same route for a lot of other cruises and for a fraction of the price. And to be fair, I haven't really been a cruise person. I went on one cruise as a kid and it was a Disney cruise, so I don't think that counts for this purpose, but it just seems like a lot. I feel like 4K a person, so 8K total, has to get you more value elsewhere. If there are any cruisers, I'm kind of curious which ones are worthwhile. The most expensive one for Ilma is $11,400 for Monte Carlo for 7 nights. That one does have a lot of stops though, and I weirdly think it looks a bit more impressive and interesting for some reason. It also could be that I haven't really explored the Mediterranean, so it's newer to me. Let's do the Evruma since I'm a bit of a completionist. The cheapest one is Barcelona to Rome. That's $6,800 for 4 nights. Taking a look at the path, I feel like you could just do that yourself. It seems like a nice driving trip. The most expensive one is Copenhagen to Iceland. That's $15,000 for 9 nights. This one does seem more interesting, but yeah, the price is pretty rough, $30K for 2 people. Now that we have the background and the pricing and everything else, it might not come as a surprise that they're struggling, to the point that the lenders have eased the terms to keep the cruise line afloat and away from bankruptcy. You're going to see in a second, but they're really behind on their payments. Surprise, surprise, they're having trouble filling rooms, and the repayment dates are being pushed back. It's quite a bit of money. They've been lent over $1.5 billion, and it's still a loss-making cruise operator. So the second biggest bank in France and the third biggest one in Spain. I feel like that's a lot of money. Okay, to be fair, cruise ships are pretty expensive. It's about $500 million to $2 billion for the super big ones, I guess. These are smaller ships, and I'm sure that they have a lot of amenities, but yeah, it's pushing towards that top end of the small to expedition ship range. Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection has struggled with low occupancy for several years. They're relying on shareholder support to plug in cash shortfalls. They're not selling enough rooms. For marketing, they spent a total of $104 million in 2025, and they accumulated losses of almost $700 million since 2017. Best case, it seems like they might be profitable in 2027. A bit of me wonders though if lowering the prices would actually help. I guess they do want to keep the standard and branding, but they have to fill the boats. The crazy thing is that the space is growing, so it went from $767K for luxury cruisers to $1.2 million, almost doubled in the last 3 years. That's luxury as a whole though, and ultra luxury like Ritz is growing a lot slower. The problem is that there is a lot more competition now, so Four Seasons launched in March, Accor launched in April, Regent is launching end of 2026. Aman's also coming online spring 2027, so in a year. Beyond that, Ritz-Carlton isn't even the nicest brand of this list. Given the slow sales, loans have been extended from December 2025 to January 2028, and from December 2027 to January 2033. That's a pretty long time. The only reason the banks are even willing to do this is because of the cash infusions by the equity owners. In total, the owners have put in $1 billion since 2017, with Oaktree owning 55%. Otherwise, they do have a lot of money outstanding, so $918 million, almost $1 billion of debt outstanding with one of the banks, and they are waiving some covenants in order to make sure that the company doesn't go bankrupt. I guess these are secured against the yachts, so the bank would take the yacht back. This feels like a zombie company right now. They had a 4-year head start and one of the biggest travel booms post-shutdown, and they couldn't take advantage of it. Competition's already here at Four Seasons, and then again, Aman coming next year. For the people with unlimited travel budgets, they're going to go to Four Seasons and Aman. If they couldn't get people to buy the product when they were the only option because it was too expensive, I'm not sure how they're going to do when there's more options. They either have to lower prices directly or in a roundabout way. They could copy airlines with first and business class, where the public price is always super expensive, but then they dump a bunch of availability, last minute, for points people. And of course, Marriott and Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection are separate companies, but I feel like there could be something that would work. At least that way the yachts aren't going out empty. Maybe do something with bank partners, let's say Citi Travel, where you get 2 cents per point. So the public retail price might be $5,000, but you're only using 2,500 points, so 250K points, to lock in 2 cents per point. That way they're not devaluing the brand because it's still 5K, but they can start filling the ships and get paid 2.5K, which is something. Main idea being that it's functionally broken and it's going to get worse. I am kind of curious if you'd book this with points if it was an option, whether it's Bonvoy points or through a bank program. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, AskSebby.com, and also down below in the description box. And if you're curious, all affiliate disclosures can also be found below in the description box. If you made it to this point, leave a boat emoji in the comments down below and I'll try to heart it and also respond. 3 questions. Number 1, what intro bonuses are you working on? Number 2, would your product change to the Citi Custom Cash Card? And number 3, what are your thoughts on the whole Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection situation? Big favorite, thumbs up, share this, but otherwise hope you liked it. See you next time.